Hello, this is Noreen Crone-Findlay from Crone-Findlay.com and TottyTalksCrafts.com. This video tutorial is a long one, and I'll explain a bit more about that in a second. And I first will show you my links for my website, which is Crone-Findlay.com, which is where you go for all my books, PDFs, patterns, designs, and other wonderful things. And TottyTalksCrafts.com is my blog, where I post all of the support material for the video tutorials. Now, this is part of a weave along for the sumac pouches that I've designed, and this particular video is the weaving techniques. Now, I'm separating each of the different almost chapters in the tutorial by having, you'll see this flower with hand-lettered chapter subtitles, and so you'll be able to move the little button on the lower line of the video to find exactly which piece of information you want to get to. So I've taken a million little videos and edited them all together to make each of the larger videos, and hopefully that will be really helpful for you. So without further ado, let's get into weaving the pouch. The reason I have a little drawing with lines going up and lines going down, slanting in one direction and to the other, is because sumac stitch will slant in different directions depending on whether the yarn is held below the needle as you work it or above the needle as you work it, which means that if you alternate rows with above and below, you will get what looks like, see here, it looks almost like a knitting stitch. If you work all your rows in the same direction, then you'll get what looks like a tweed. Now, another thing about working the sumac stitch is that it's easier to work from, if you're right-handed, from left to right. But to get back to the left-hand side, you need a traveling row. And so you use a tabby row under over one, or a semi-tabby row under over two. Sometimes it's under one, over two, under one, depending on your pattern. So you, with the 4-2, the first number indicates that you're traveling over, I'm just going to lift these up, that you're going to travel over 1, 2, 3, 4 warp strands. So that's the 4. And the 2 part of it means that you're going to take your needle back under 2. And so we're going to start off with 4-2 sumac for the border. I'm going to work border. I've given myself extra rows here because I know the wool warp is definitely going to shorten up and pull in. So I'll show you, this is the cartoon that this particular pouch is going to be, and so I'm going to start with green. So I start by weaving in a row of the green. Just at the middle of the row, I'm just going to take the tail in, going under, over, under, and through. Now, what I want to do is to just snug that end in. I'll push that end back through to the back. I'm going to push it down with my fork. And now I'm going to weave from right to left into each of the loop ends. I want to catch each one, and so I do need to go under and over all the way across so that my yarn, weft yarn, will be packed into the fold. And with this particular pattern, it's you're not going to be losing your you're not going to lose your warp strands, because we will be finishing the ends afterwards. Oh, now here's something that's really important to know, and that is that it's always essential to come out at the right hand side underneath the last warp strand. So if you need to divide your warp strands up, then that's just fine. If you need to go over to, not to worry. So we're coming out over top of the last warp strand here, which is exactly what we want to do. I will be untying this knot in the finishing process. So I'm going to push my weft strand over that knot. There we go. And beat that weft right down to the hooks. Now we're going to start our 4-2. I'm going to lift the ribbon over the ends of the S hooks because I don't want my yarn catching on them. We're going to work all our sumac stitches. We're going to work with the yarn below the needle. Although if it's easier for you to work with it above, then please feel free. Now I'm going to start by going under and around the first 2 warp strands. Then I'm going to go, this is when I start my actual 4-2. You see, I am taking, the yarn is passing over 4 warp strands and going under 2. I used 2 strands of warp per hook, and so you can see that that is in reality double strands there, but I'm still treating them as if they were a single strand. And I will simply work across now, picking up 2, stitching across. Don't pull up super tight, because that will draw your strands together too much. The 4-2 is really fast. You can work 6-3, but usually I would only do that on a much larger piece, because with the small small scale of the project that we're working on here, I do think that at 8 ends per inch that 6-3 is too coarse, unless, you know, like if you switch to 10 or 12 ends per inch, then I think 6-3 is fine. But I really don't think that we're going to we would do that with this. Now at the end, you're going to go around the last set of warp strands one more time, and then you're going to, we can go under 2, over 2, across in our traveling row, and we definitely want to come out under the furthest left-hand one. I'm holding back my warp from pulling in too much. You know, you can angle your weft, or you can bubble your weft, or, you know, what I do is just go very very easy on the tension when I'm pulling it over. But whatever is your most comfortable way of working with it. Okay, so you'll see how very quickly the 4-2 does work. It just buzzes right across. And I want to whip across a few rows of this, because what I'd like you to see is doing a color join with when you're working with the same color of weft yarn. Basically what you'll do when you run out of yarn is you will be just pushing the yarn end down to the back and then adding your new yarn coming up from the back in the same place that you went down, and then later during the finishing stages you will be tying the ends together. If this was a carpet that was going to show on both sides, you would definitely just weave your ends in during the traveling row. And if you prefer to do that, that's fine too. Now notice, because I'm starting with things change a little when you double your warp, the way I did on the warping the 12-inch. So I'm going over 2 strands across, but ending up with 1 and 1 on the outside edges. Just wanted to mention that in case you went, what is Noreen doing? That's what Noreen is doing. So back under and travel across, and I pinch my right hand side to the cartoon before I beat, and then I beat from the right hand side, so that if my weft needs to be taken up, that it can have some take up from the off the needle. Now, can you do sumac just using bobbins or shuttles? Of course you can. But with such a small scale project as this one, it is really easier to just use the darning needles. So now, can you see how this thread is starting to unravel? I'm going to take and I'm just giving my needle a spin, because you don't want your weft to get all unspun on you. So I'm just going to work my border 4-2 up to the point where the cartoon starts. So that's about a 1/2 inch that I've given myself for the 4-2 border. And make the extra stitch for traveling back at the border crossing stitch. Maybe that's the passport stitch. Okay, so you can see I am going to run out of yarn, which is what I wanted to do in this segment, is show you how to start the next one. Okay, so we've got about 1.5 inches here. If I was going to weave this in during the traveling row, I would leave it on the surface and leave the end of the next strand on the surface, and then weave them in the traveling row. But because I'm going to be, oh, by the way, I wind my skeins of yarn into yarn cakes using a Nosta pin, and I'll give you the link on how to do that. Because I'm going to be tying my ends in at during the finishing stages, I'm going to take this yarn and in with along with the new one, and I'm going to push them down and tap into place with my needle. And there you have it, there's a join. So I'm just going to finish this row and travel back to the right hand side, and then we'll start working the 2-2-1 sumac. The body of the pouch is going to be worked in 2-1 sumac. So we're going to, again, I've worked my traveling row back to the left hand side. So I'm going to start by just going under the one set of warp strands at the left hand side, and now I will be going under. Okay, I just want to remind you I'm working with doubled warp strands here, so even though it looks like I'm picking up 2 strands, we're counting the doubled warp as 1. But if you wanted to work 16 ends per inch, then you would go over each single warp strand. But we're working 8 strands, 8 ends per inch, so I am treating each of those doubled warp strands as if they were a single strand. So you see how, oh, I'm so sorry. My apologies for bouncing. So you see how with 2-1 sumac, I'm traveling over 2 warp strands and going back under 1. So need to go up a bit here to make sure that I'm, yep, got that right. So under 1 and over 2 and under 1. And so all of the pouch is going to be worked with the 2-1 sumac. This first row is slower because I haven't defined it yet for myself, because when I was working with 4-2, the warp strands kind of got squished together. And so now I'm asking them to kindly move ever so slightly apart again. You can experiment and see if you would rather do the entire pouch in 4-2. It certainly is faster. I just like the way the 2-1 works with the patterning. And as you're working the pattern, you're going to, the cartoon is more of a suggestion than rigidly following exactly where it is, because what you're going to do is you're going to want to work everything symmetrically. So here you're going to want to work 10 warp strands on the one side and 10 warp strands on the other, with 4 in the middle. Even though my cartoon might be sitting ever so slightly off center, I wouldn't work off center. I would know that I want to keep everything lined up and symmetrical. So remember how I went around one more time before I went back in my traveling row? Well, I'm going to do the same thing with my 2-1 sumac. Here we go. Oops, and at the end, I want to always come out underneath the farthest left-hand side set of warp strands, and so I'm going under 2 in the traveling row to work my way across. And I snug onto my farthest right hand warp strand. If you have about 3 inches left on the left hand side or on the right hand side, you might want to start your very next row with a whole fresh new strand of yarn. I kind of like having them woven in. And sometimes if my yarn is too short to work with the needle properly, I work with it backwards. When all else fails, feel free to go backwards. Okay, time to join another strand. I like to break the warp strands, even though I'm going to be tying them in. They do tend to I'm going to push this guy in. I think I'll push push this guy down behind. There we go. And then we'll tie that on afterwards. I do like to use a broken strand. I think it's just a matter of habit. It's what I've always done. But of course, you know that a broken weft strand will weave in better than a snipped one. So here we go, just zooming right along with our 2-1 sumac. So I'm going to stop and work my way up to, you can see here's the pattern. I'm going to have to make some color joins up here. So I want to show you how we do those. So I will just carry on and join you again when it's time to add some more colors. I've stayed quiet through most of the chapter headings, but this one is just so important, as you can tell by all the little stars, that I'm not going to stay quiet. This is how to add new colors, really important, and how to join colors. So really, 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 really important. So how can you tell when it's time to change colors? If you can see here, I'm not sure if you can see, you will be able to see your pattern through it's much easier to see with just a single strand of warp. Here, you can actually see through the warp strands quite easily. So when it's time for you, I have worked up to this point. So maybe that's what I'll do, is I'll work on this loom instead, because it's easier for you to see. So you see, I have worked up to this. Okay, this is this cartoon is colorway is what I'm doing with this one. I've worked up to this point. The border is down here, the 4-2 border is here, and the 2-1 border is here, and so we are here. X marks the spot. That's where we are. So I have woven my main background color across, and my pattern is here. I think I might even scooch down a little closer. See if I can get there. Okay, hopefully that's still in focus. Okay, so now I don't want to take my weft strand all the way across to the left-hand row when I'm doing my traveling row. I want my background color to stop before I add my next color, which is the yellow. And so I'm going to count out 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 warp strands, and then I bring my background color up at that 10th warp strand between it and the next one. But I'm going to need to add more colors, because I need black over here for this row, this side of the pattern. So I'm going to break myself off a strand of black, and that's going to be for this side, and I've already nipped off some yellow and threaded it in. And because this is my traveling row, I'm working from right to left. So my yellow strand is going to go in the same space between the two warp strands as the black. And I want it to go across 4 warp strands for this section here. So remember how I always want to come up under the furthest left-hand side warp strand in any color block? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go under the furthest right-hand side warp strand of the 4 and over 2 and under 1 and bring my yellow up and out to the surface. I'm going to park it because I need to join in the black for the next color block. So it's going to go down and I'm going to want to come up under. I'm going to go over 2, under, over 2, under, and then in order to come out under the last one, I go over 1, under 1. And now I have my 3 colors added. When you're working in colors, in different color blocks, you're going to work a join between each of the colors as you shift from one color to the next. And the way that I've figured out for myself, and I haven't seen this done anywhere in any books, so I'm sure someone wrote about it somewhere, but I haven't seen it. I'm going to work, I have 10 warp strands of black, but I'm going to do 2, 1. I want to snug that one up a bit. I'm going to work my 2, 1 sumac, I just need to get that guy out of the way a bit, across the first, oh, get out of there. Don't you hate it when you get volunteers? It's like, don't do that. I'm going to work across the first 9 warp strands of my 10 block color, because my join is going to happen on the last warp strand on the right hand side of the color block. And doing your color shifting this way makes for a really beautifully precise color change. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And now for my last warp strand in this color block, I'm going to work the color join before I start the next color block. I'm going to pick up the yellow weft strand. I'm not going under the first warp strand of the yellow, only under the weft. Then I'm going to pick up the last warp strand in the black color block, and see how I've captured the yellow strand in with the black. I'm now going to go around my black strand again above where I did that join, and I'm going to work my way back. I have to go under to it this side because I want my traveling row to come out underneath the last strand, and this block is done. I often tap it in with my finger, but I don't beat until I've done the entire row. Now I will drop my black left-hand block thread, and I'm going to pick up my yellow. I'm going to work, it's 4 strands that I'm going to be doing, so I'm going to work 1, 2, 3, and now I'm going under my right hand color, and I'm joining it at the edge of the right hand strand of the yellow. Okay, you see how the black is captured with the yellow? Perfect. So I'm going to go with my yellow, travel back to the edge of the block and drop my yellow, and now I'm going to just work the rest of my row in the 3rd color. And that is how you will work your color joins. For every row. That's how you add colors and join. Now on this one I'm going to go around and then work my way back. I have to go under 2 here to come out under my furthest left hand strand. And there you have it. That is how you add colors and how you make the joins between colors. Just a little word here about sound effects in the background. We're in the middle of a big storm. This has been the summer of big storms, and so if you hear crashing and booming in the background, that's what's happening. Okay, so I want to show you a couple things with stepping colors sideways, and also too with, you see how this nubbins of color here, this little oval of color here is just about ready to end. I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to work one more row. The pattern, as you can see, is stepping over to the left and over to the right. So when I am working my traveling row, I'm going to work this last row of sumac that is in this section here of the pattern, and then the change for color shifts in either direction happens in the traveling row. Okay, so I finished this block of goldenrod. I'm going to travel my my yarn goes all the way to the right hand edge. Now my red is going to the sumac. Will again, it's going to, whoops, I just had a little snag there. Oh, that's fancy. Fun and fancy. Okay, there. Okay, and work my color change to purple. And now, when I travel my row back to the, I'm going to make my color change here. When I travel back to the new edge of the color, see it is going to, the red is now going to pass over part of the yellow row. There we go. So that's my first color shift there. I'm going to work, this is going to be the last row of the purple. So I'm going to work my sumac stitches, and then I'm just going to snip that off and push that yarn down behind. And because it's only 2 stitches, I'm not going to worry about working a travel row back that way. Now, this row, I'm going to work, this row is going to work to the very edge of the, boy, the rain is really coming down, to the very edge of the red color block, and then I'm going to travel it back, but I'm going to travel it over the purple and bring it out. And I'm going to keep working color changes on the red for a couple of rows, and then it's going to move over to here, and a new color will be joined here. So I work my yellow row. By the way, if you have considered buying the 5-inch mini, but Merrick's, but haven't because you thought, oh well, you know, I don't want to loom just for weaving bracelets. Don't let any preconceived notions stop you, because you can do these sumac pouches, you can do all kinds of wonderful weaving with the mini. So I absolutely love it. I am thrilled to bits with it. Now, in my traveling row with the yellow, I am not, because the next row of red is going to come to this point, I'm going to not travel the yellow over the last 2 warp strands. I will be now working shorter rows of the yellow, and the red will now have stepped out in both directions. So that's how your color step out sideways works. And I will be showing you how to color step inwards too. Just want to finish this row showing you that even though the whole row is red, because pretty soon I'm going to be adding another color in the middle, I will work a color change with both colors being red. I still work the color change. Next row, I'm going to be adding in the turquoise or teal. There. So even though it's the same color, I worked an invisible color join there, and you'd never know it. Now, you can see I am going to work over the 2 stitches that were formerly yellow, and so I have now, I think I will work one more row of red there. You know, no, actually I think I will start my turquoise there. So I'm going to bring this red out here, and then I'll make a join with the turquoise. So there you have it. Sideways directions, sideways steps outwards. And I will do a little more weaving up so that I can show you how to, up to here, I guess. And then I'll show you how we do the sideways steps inward, kind of like a dance. There we have it. So now I'm going to show how to step sideways moving in. You can see I'm going to just push the camera down to the, just set it down a little lower. Okay, there we go. You can see I have woven up to this point. So the blue is going to step towards the center on both sides, and the red is stepping into the area that was blue before. So the blue is going over yellow on both sides. So here's how we do that stepping in. I will now when I was doing my traveling row, what I should have done with the blue here is I should have brought it out at this point. So I just corrected that because I'm going to be taking the red all the way across to this point here. And the blue on this side should actually be stepped over 2 warp strands here. Whoops, wrong needle. Okay. So the blue is going to come out here. Now, and the red needs to be stepped over to here. So the stepping really progresses the same whether you are stepping out or stepping in. You move your color to the place where the line moves to. So I've got the camera really snugged up closely to the weaving here. It's a bit of a challenge to get my hands in under there, but I just wanted you to be able to see that really clearly, and I do hope that's in focus. We're in the thick of a very intense storm. It's been going on for hours. There's actually, between the last shot and this one, there was a couple of hours of weaving time went in there, and the storm is still just storming. Whoops, I just was a bit precipitous in picking that one up. It should, there, I skipped a stitch. Okay, and here we go. There. So I'm making my join, and it goes back. Red goes back, or russet, I guess. It's more of a russet than a true red. And pick up the first blue. And now the first blue is going to be stepping over to this line. So it's going over 2 warp strands that used to be yellow. So there you have it. Stepping in Oh, I had run out of yellow, so I need to stop and put a strand of yellow in there. Do that right now. And pop the end in down there. Okay. And you can see I'm just joining my yellow now. And remember, you stitch under the next color and then you're going to stitch over again above it. So there you have it, stepping the colors in both directions. So what you do is on the traveling row before the sumac, you take your thread, your yarn, to the place where the pattern says, here's your new vertical line. And that is how you end up with really nice, precise lines. Let me just swing this. See, your lines are very just... Oh, this one jogs because I joined in the middle of the row. But otherwise, your lines should be just lovely. And that's okay because I will be doing chain stitch embroidery over that, so it's not a big deal. There. So that's how you make your color changes. Stepping from side in or out, side to side. So you see, this comes out where the drawing vertical line is. Okay, I think you've got it. And if you don't, just rewind and just keep watching. So far, all the color changes that I've been showing you have been how to work color shifts, well, how to add new colors, and how to shift your colors on the horizontal axis. But what if you want to do a pouch that has stripes, like this one does? Well, it's really easy. You simply work your rows of your... Sorry for the lightning and thunder in the background. It's just a wild and stormy day. Just work your rows, in this case, work your rows of white, then put down your white strand when you're going to start this row. You will, of course, bring your traveling row right out to the edge. Then pick up the black and work your sumac and traveling back. So you'll work, these worked out to being 3 rows each in the 3 rows black, 3 rows white. Oh, and that's 3 rows of sumac with the traveling back row included. And so I didn't, because I'm going to, because the pouches are lined, I didn't worry about weaving in that, sorry about the tap, I didn't worry about weaving in the side edge as the yarn traveled up the side. I just simply made sure those loops of yarn were small dogs behaving badly. It's a lot of background noise here. I just stitched those rows inside the lining. But what about up here in the center section? These ones, definitely a good idea because it's quite a long haul. You can, well, it's your choice. You can either break your yarn and just push your end inside and tie it off, or if you want, you can pick it up and have a long loop and just start, working. So it's the black that you'd have the long loop and then up to here. Personal choice. Either way, it's going to be just fine. So that's how you make your horizontal rows. When you're reaching the top of the mini with your weaving, what's going to happen is you're going to find that the top warp strands are pulled in because of the knob thingies at the top of the loom. And so there's a trick to being able to weave the rest of the pouch on the mini without having your warp ends pulling in. And that is the topsy-turvy trick. I'm going to turn the loom sideways so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to undo the loom's little headscarves and take them off. Now I'm going to loosen the tension right down to the very bottom, because I'm going to compress the loom right down to a very small configuration. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse the loom on itself, and then I'm going to take the loom out, turn it around, and have the two knobs will now be at the bottom of the weaving instead of the top, so that the part of the pouch that is already woven will be compressed by the knobs, and the rest of the weaving can just, okay, we'll collapse that, take it out, yep, so then the rest of the weaving can just carry on without being compressed. So, of course, you have to set up your tension again. Oops, just put those in there. And isn't that easy? It just works so beautifully. It's one of those, oh yes. It makes the loom, because the loom is so small and portable, you do have to have some compromises, but it makes the loom really workable by being able to do that. And of course, because your warp strands, your textile cords and your cartoon on the cardstock and the warp strands are all set up, it's very easy to make this shift. Of course, we have to measure to make sure it is square. I'm just going to put a little more tension on here. I need to check on this side that all is well. Yes, all is well. But you can see this thumb screw has to be tightened up yet. And I will get a ruler and check to make sure I am perfectly square. And I will just arrange my warp so that my warp is all organized so it's back to being 8 ends per inch, and then I'll carry on weaving, and that will be that. So there you have it, the topsy-turvy trick for the mini. It's one of those nifty things that it's like, oh yeah. Oh, and of course don't forget to put her little bows back on. So here is the pouch that's on my littlest, the mini loom. And I have, you can see that after I took the, I did the topsy-turvy switch, then it just makes the weaving to the top just a piece of cake so that your war pins are no longer squished in. I just want to give you a little hint here, and that is the last ½ inch of the top edge of the pouch. You can use yarn from your stash and not use your gorgeous kit yarn or, you know, your precious decorative yarn, because that is going to become less noticeable. So there you have it. The mini is just perfect for weaving the pouches. And on we go to more of the finishing. Oh, I just decided I should probably show you how to get how to take the weaving off the mini. Actually, how to take it off any loom is you will turn the thumb screws, and in the case of the mini, you can slip the entire weaving. Oops, a bit more. Collapse that a bit more. You can slip the entire weaving off, just like you did with the topsy-turvy trick. And then the paper clips just come out of the war pins in preparation for weaving. Now notice that I have taken the last set of weft yarns through the war pins, so that at the top of the loom, so that the weaving doesn't come undone. So that's, well, there you go. That was easy. Just pull the rod out. I tend to get into, keeping things together, and it's like, you don't have to keep it together. It's very easy to put it together again afterwards. So when you're finished, you take your weaving off of either the S-hooks or the paper clips in preparation for the finishing stages of the pouch. And there we have that.